Hey guys, welcome to Canopy. In this video, we're going to look at Canopy AI's HR interviews. So HR interviews are typically the first interview you would do after you submit your application. Normally, these look at your resume and experiences. They'll ask you industry-specific questions that are normally vague and superficial, and they'll place you in hypothetical scenarios to understand what you would do should you be in these situations. So we've built HR interviews for 24 different industry types, from investment banking to software engineering, and we've partnered up with job offer holders who've just gone through this process to build the perfect interview and feedback experience for you to practice on. So I'm going to do a demo investment banking HR interview, but there are loads others. And without further ado, let's get started. All right, cool. So now let's jump straight into an investment banking HR interview.
Thanks for coming. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's start with your time at Sentiment. Could you share a bit more about how you navigated the role of CEO as a student?
Yeah, sure. So actually, at the time, I was working on Sentiment full time, so I wasn't a student then. But in terms of my role, I was responsible for managing a team of 6 people. I was responsible for selling the product as well as building the product. But I would say my most important role was organizing how the sales and feedback we heard from our customers or prospective customers in terms of what they wanted played into what we would build in terms of the product. So that sort of interconnecting link between actual clients and actual coding. And I think that was a pretty pivotal role within the startup and sort of managing everything so everything fit together in an interconnected way was my main responsibility.
You mentioned the interplay between client feedback and product development. Could you give a specific example where this interplay drastically improved your product's performance?
Well, maybe not specifically improving the product's performance, but definitely improving a specific product line. So at the start, our main product was a dashboard where investors could see the data and AI analysis that we'd done. But we sort of shifted to quantitative data and indicators. And a big piece of feedback we received from the sales team was that people wanted historical data. And I think I was a key driver in recognizing that and basically making the main focus of the product team, of the technical team, analyzing a lot of historical data. This meant taking a big risk because there was a large upfront cost to us, um, several like tens of thousands. And so it sort of meant that, especially for an early stage company, it was a big risk that we had to take. But I think I was able to connect the sales side to the product side, so we're able to obtain this data, and this actually had the net impact of netting us a lot of clients, which proved to be useful.
Thanks for explaining that. Now, I'm curious about your interest in investment banking. Why are you attracted to this field?
Sure. So during my time at Sentiment, I realized I like three things: financial markets. So whatever role I'm in, I'd like to be embedded within financial markets. Secondly, is negotiating and forming relationships with clients. I really enjoy that interpersonal sort of connected uh, line of work. And thirdly, is the high risk, high reward environment that you get from working with large institutional clients. In our case, we had at Sentiment, we had hedge funds with assets in the 12 digits. And obviously, as an investment bank, you'd be dealing with the same high profile clients. And I think these three things really drive my passion towards investment banking.
It sounds like your experience at Sentiment played a key role in fostering your interest in finance. Could you tell me about a specific moment during your tenure as CEO when you felt particularly energized or inspired by the financial markets?
Yeah, sure. So one thing that we did a lot of was preparing presentations and basically a lot of Jupyter notebooks actually. So we prepared Jupyter notebooks for people in hedge funds and show them our data and how they could use that to promote markets. And there was one week where we were able to basically just gather a lot of really exciting evidence to back our indicators, and it was a lot of fun showing this to the general public. Not just because it got us customers, which obviously is nice, but it was just fun seeing something I'd built and my team had built playing a pivotal role in the decision making process of uh, big institutions and a lot of individual algo traders as well.
That sounds like a really exciting time for you. Switching gears a bit, you mentioned that you enjoy negotiating and forming relationships with clients. Can you share a negotiation experience you had with a client at Sentiment that challenged you and how you handled it?
Yeah, sure. So one of our customers was a uh, another follow-on financial data provider, a large company, a well-known company called Financial Modeling Prep, and they have a cloud division, F&B Cloud. I'll refer to it as that sells to I believe a few thousand algo traders and also some lots of hedge funds. And our product was slightly ropey at the start in terms of its consistency and reliability. So one thing I was able to do that was able to drive the relationship and make it more basically help drive the sales process and form the relationship was actually give the customer my WhatsApp, my personal WhatsApp number. And a lot of the times he would contact me on WhatsApp, like saying, "Oh, this is not working, that's not working," and we'd be able to address the issue instantly. And I think that level of trust on my end, and actually like being willing to sort of form that relationship with our customer, um, was played a big role in actually driving the relationship and the product forward as well.
Building that trust with clients is crucial indeed. Now, speaking of high risk and high reward environments, could you recall a time when you had to take a significant risk at Sentiment and how it played out?
Yeah, sure. So I think that one big risks that we took was investing a lot of money into getting historical data. So one thing we had sort of seen hints of from the sales team was a pivot towards more quantitative indicators. This was probably 3 to 4 months after launching the product publicly. And there was a lot of technical investment that we would need to do to make the product ready for that, and a lot of financial investment to make the product ready for that because now the data was more quantitative. We needed to be a lot more rigorous with our analysis, etc. Because like third or fourth significant figures might making differences to trading algorithms at that point. So one thing we ended up, so yeah, we basically made the decision to not really pivot, but expand our product offering, and this became ended up becoming our main product offering. But it required a lot of capital upfront and a big risk in terms of the future of the company. If this pivot didn't end up working out, we would have wasted a lot of resources and technical time and financial capital to making this pivot happen, which would have almost possibly even caused the end of our startup because we wouldn't have been able to basically afford it if it didn't work out. So yeah, this was a big risk, and the reason what I would say my main learning was is when taking this risk, I was able to take a very objective, data-driven approach and look at the possible upside driven by what potential customers had told us they'd be interested in, and basically taking emotions out of the picture and saying, you know what, we can afford to take this risk because our expected value is X, Y, and Z because we've got these many customers soft committing this much amount. And so yeah, so taking the sort of expected value side of things, and also the trust, just having trust in other people and what people say and what people are willing to do, and having that foresight to understand, okay, this person actually will become a client, this person won't if we make this product change. So yeah, two things: having faith in humanity and faith in other people, sort of following through with their soft commitments, and being willing to take sort of a data-driven, objective approach, help mitigate the risks.
That's a valuable lesson indeed. Shifting gears a bit, could you describe a time when you had to work under tight deadlines in a high pressure environment? How did you manage your time and maintain quality work?
Sure. So, just to clarify, you want me to talk about working under in a high pressure environment with a when there was a tight deadline.
Yes, exactly.
Um,
I'm interested in hearing more about how you handled a challenging situation with a high stakes deadline at Sentiment.
okay, sure. So, I guess one thing I can talk about was when our product actually completely stopped working. This was probably 5 to 6 months in, and something had changed in our cloud provider that meant that our product was temporarily down. Now, for maybe most SaaS products, this isn't really a big deal because if the product's down, let's say it's like, I don't know, a video editing software, you can just come back and edit your video in 3 to 4 hours. If our product is down, trading algorithms that used our data ended up not functioning. And the biggest sort of problem with this regard was to do with a provider I just mentioned, Financial Modeling Prep, and a few other providers that used our data. I can give you other examples like OpenBB. So there are a lot of different providers that used our data, and their customers were basically suffering. So our product not working had a bit of a network effect. And so the change to our cloud provider meant that our servers were basically being overloaded with requests because we basically routed these following companies routed all their requests straight to our servers rather than through their own servers to our servers. So what we were able to do is we were able to hack together in a couple of hours a really nifty solution that basically rerouted their client's request to their service. So their service took on a bit more load, and ours didn't. So we could sort of deal with this immediate problems. We were able to reduce the quality of our product, but it was still functional and it was able to provide pretty good data. But for a couple of hours, there was some compromises we had to make, and it basically meant at 1 a.m. staying up for the next 4 hours trying to figure out exactly how we were going to fix the problem as quickly as possible in the most hackiest solution possible, because we basically had clients breathing down our throats, WhatsApping us, emailing us, calling us, in fact, as well. But fortunately, there was a very strong, committed team effort to resolving the problem and several steps we took to mitigate the effects of the damage. And yeah, we got through it.
That sounds like an intense situation. How did this experience influence your approach to problem solving and project management moving forward?
I think that there's a lot. I've sort of put a lot more emphasis on specific responsibilities. So, and I want to emphasize not blame but responsibilities. So if there's a change that's happening, there has to be a single person that takes point that's responsible for basically learning all about the potential risks that could happen, and they're responsible for coming up with solutions to minimize these risks, essentially eliminating risks. And I realized that putting responsibility on a specific person has is a much more successful approach to managing risks, because if you sort of just say, oh, these are all the risks but we're all sort of responsible for managing them, they never actually get managed and they never actually get fixed. But if there's one person who's mostly in charge of it or is completely in charge of it, then they know exactly that they have to take responsibility and fix the problem. So I think allocation of responsibility, and also just to emphasize, this is not allocation of blame. If something does go wrong and someone was in charge of it, it's not an excuse to sort of blame them and say it's only their problem. But I think, with regards to the former, allocation of responsibility is a good way to mitigate this.
That's an important distinction between responsibility and blame. Now, moving on to regulatory matters. As an investment banking aspirant, how do you plan to keep track of various financial regulations and compliance requirements?
Sure. I think so. One thing that I think is very important is having very good relationships with legal counsel. Nurturing good relationships with legal counsel and making sure that they are have a full understanding of the projects that I'm working on means that they can anticipate certain regulatory obstacles that might occur. Also, there's a lot of software, especially AI-based software, that I'm aware of that looks at government pages, looks at regulatory pages, and detects changes and alerts you to changes that might impact you. So yeah, I think having good relationship with legal counsel, making sure that they're fully integrated into the project, and also keeping up to date with the latest tools can help me mitigate these risks.
It sounds like you have an excellent plan in place. Could you expand a bit on your experience with regulatory matters during your time at Sentiment and how it might apply to your work in investment banking?
Yeah, sure. So during my time at Sentiment, there weren't too many regulations that we had to be worried about, fortunately. But there was one particular one which was with regards to assets we were allowed to hold personally as directors of the company, given that our company was selling financial data. So I think that what we did really well was we sort of basically agreed, okay, none of us, we're not going to try and deal with the regulation as is and declare our assets and all of this stuff. We're basically, none of us are going to invest. We're going to close all our positions, and we're going to focus on sort of minimizing the possible damage that regulation could do to the startup, and minimizing the time we'd have to spend dealing with regulations. So we basically deprioritized our own personal liability, and deprioritized our own personal interests, and basically said, okay, in the interest of regulation, we're just going to focus wholeheartedly on basically the startup itself. So we didn't have to worry about this specific regulation. In general, we would consult with law firms to see if we really needed anything or any help. We did this on a couple of occasions for specific regulatory factors we needed to consider. And also, we used legal software like Seed Legals in terms of Regulation required to managing the organization. So yeah.
That's insightful. It sounds like you were very practical in your approach to dealing with regulations. Could you give an example of a time when you used legal software or consulted with legal firms to navigate a challenging regulatory scenario?
Sure. So at one point in time, we wanted to do something, I guess, funky with our cap table. And so a piece of legal software that would recommend, I'm not endorsed by them, is C Legals. They're able to handle a lot of the complexities of cap tables. And while this wasn't sort of regulation specific to the financial industry, I would say I guess it answers the question well. It's a piece of legal software that we were able to use to basically. It was to do with adding sort of like debt investors to our cap tables, so there were like mixed clauses to do with equity and debt, which was useful.
It sounds like you effectively utilize legal software to navigate complex situations. Now, looking at the broader investment banking landscape, what are the current challenges and opportunities you see in this industry? And how do you envision yourself contributing to the firm's success in this context?
So I think the biggest challenge and opportunity is the role of AI in the next 5 to 10 years. I think that AI has a lot of opportunities. It can streamline a lot of the processes. It can even eliminate the need for humans, and it'll actually reduce the amount of work that we have to do in certain situations. But it's a challenge because it needs to be managed in a responsible manner. There needs to be clear divisions of responsibility. Like people can't just use AI, and if it produces incorrect results, say, "Oh, it's the AI's fault." There needs to be very strict guidelines in place about where AI should be used, where it shouldn't be used, and where it can be augmented with human sort of supervision. And I think my experience building in AI for a long time, understanding the limitations of AI models, understanding the opportunities to get ahead of the competition by integrating AI into various systems to make a lot of processes more streamlined, I can bring my expertise in that area into the bank.
Your perspective on the integration of AI in the industry is quite compelling. Could you share an instance from your work at Sentiment where you utilized AI in a way that significantly benefited your operations?
I wouldn't be able to do that because the sort of advances in AI weren't around like to the same extent in 2021 as they are today.
I understand. Looking ahead, how do you see yourself using your AI expertise to overcome some of the challenges you mentioned in the investment banking industry, particularly around responsible management and clear divisions of responsibility?
That's a good question. Just give me a moment to think about it.
Absolutely, take your time. I'm interested in hearing how you plan to leverage your AI knowledge in a banking context, especially considering the responsibility aspects you mentioned.
So I think that there are 2 or 3 ways I can bring my expertise. So the first one is alignment. AI models should have a good, I guess, idea of what their restrictions are, and I think the biggest problem that the banking industry will face is hallucinations. AI might claim something, a banker might include it in a report, and the report might have high stakes information that that claim might basically cause some detrimental long term consequences. So, to deal with hallucinations, I have a lot of experience with fine tuning, so I can basically help with alignment in that regard. In terms of making the AI models more less likely to hallucinate, which is in that regard. Secondly, I think an understanding of how the models actually work and what their strengths and weaknesses are. So, for example, large language transformer models aren't good at math, so any quantitative assessments of companies, etc., shouldn't be entrusted to these models. Yeah, I think understanding the strengths and weaknesses of different models can help also minimize the inefficiencies that the bank might face if they try to sort of allocate the wrong models to the wrong tasks.
Indeed, understanding the strengths and limitations of models is crucial in AI applications. Lastly, with your unique background and skills, what unique value do you think you could bring to the team here in Goldman Sachs?
I think that my technical abilities combined with my sales abilities can allow me to envision products or adaptations to products that we offer to clients. Because not only will I be able to understand what the client wants from my sales experience, but I'll also be able to envision what is possible, what is easy to do, what is difficult to do, and what the sort of technical barriers to accomplishing certain projects that our clients might want is. And especially as the entire industry becomes more tech oriented, I think this will play a very useful role in 2 to 3 years as the industry becomes more tech oriented. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks for coming in. You'll get your feedback in a few seconds.
Hey guys, now that we've done the interview, it's time to look at our feedback. So we're going to jump into the review section. But before we do that, let's quickly go over what you will find in the review section. So you'll find an annotated version of your entire interview with specific pointers you can use to improve your answers. Not only this, each candidate gets their own personal AI coach that learns and develops with you. It'll go through your interview with you. It'll give you frameworks that you'll probably have heard of, like STAR, CAR, problem solution response, or whatever else is applicable for that question, for you, for that industry. So you'll get super customized, tailored interview feedback for yourself. And without further ado, let's jump straight in. Hello. Shall we get started with the review?
Absolutely. Let's dive into your interview performance review. Overall, you did a great job in articulating your experiences and skills. Your responses showed depth in your understanding of the industry and the role you're targeting. However, there are specific areas where you could improve.
Okay, let's start by working on this answer. How could I have improved this answer?
While you did a good job explaining the situation, your response could have been more structured and concise. A good practice is to utilize the STAR method: situation, task, action, result, when answering interview questions. For instance, you could have said situation.
Actually, you know what? I want to try and give it a go myself. Is that okay? Can I retry?
Absolutely. That's a fantastic idea. I'll be here to provide feedback. Take your time and remember to be concise and to the point.
Okay, so situation, task, action, response. So essentially, one client approached us and said that they wanted historical data, but there would have been a large upfront cost for providing this data. We decided to take the risk and built in the system to provide the data. And the response from further clients was a lot of happiness, and we acquired a lot of new customers.
That's a great improvement. This response is much more concise and structured, and it directly addresses the question. It clearly communicates the situation, the challenge, the decision you made, and the positive outcome that resulted. Well done! Remember to keep practicing this structured approach to your responses.
Okay,
Is there
quick question. So this section, I'm reading my section feedback. Could you go over the points that I needed to improve upon this section?
Certainly. Here's a summary of the main areas you could improve based on this section of your interview. 1. Diversify your examples. It's great that you have a significant achievement with developing Jupyter notebooks for hedge funds. However, using the same example for multiple questions can make it seem like your experiences are limited. Try to pull in different instances from your experience to fully showcase your skills and
Okay, quick
abilities.
question. So does this mean that I should pull in different experiences from sentiment, or I should broaden my range of experiences to outside sentiment?
Great question. Ideally, you should try to do both. If you have a variety of experiences within sentiment that showcase different skills or accomplishments, it would be beneficial to use those different examples. However, if you have relevant experiences from outside sentiment, such as from roles in other organizations, projects, or even instances from your academic career,
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so for this question on feeling energized or inspired, what framework could I use to answer these sorts of questions?
for a question like this, you could use the CAR, context, action, result framework. For instance, 1. Context. Briefly describe the situation or setting that got you particularly energized or inspired. This could be a specific project, task, or interaction. 2. Action. Explain what you did in response to this situation, how you contributed, or how you expressed your enthusiasm and energy. 3. Result. Share the outcome of this situation. If possible, include the impact on your team, a project, or the business. Did it lead to a new initiative, a great result
Okay,
for the
I got
project?
it. I got it. Let me give it a go then. So, actually, you know what? I actually want to move on to a different question. I think I get the idea for that one. So, this one, you've given me quite a bit of feedback. Um, so, what would you say I need to improve on in this question?
Based on the feedback, the main area to improve in this response is structure. Even though you provided detailed information, it was a bit difficult to follow due to the lack of structure. Presenting your response in a problem solution result format can significantly improve clarity and impact.
Problem solution result. Okay, I'll try and do it with the problem solution result. Is that okay? Could you ask me the question again and then maybe give me feedback?
Definitely go ahead. Remember, the question is about a time when you had to take a significant risk at sentiment and how it played out. Try structuring your response as follows. Problem. What was the challenge or
Okay,
issue
I
you
got
were?
it. I'll try. Okay, so the problem was getting a lot of historical data because it was time consuming and costly. The solution was we found hacky methods to get large banks of historical data from alternative sources, then primary APIs that Reddit and Twitter offered. And the response was our customers were very happy because even though the data was obtained in a hacky way, it was still high quality, and the upfront risk that we took with capital and time proved to be more than worth it.
That's a great improvement. Your response is clear, structured, and to the point. You clearly laid out the problem, the action you took, and the positive result. Remember, practice makes perfect. The more you practice using this structure in your responses, the more naturally it will come to you in interviews. Is there another part of the interview you'd like to review?
Yeah, so this one that I'm on, even though I've seemed to have received positive feedback, I felt a bit hesitant when answering the question. Is there anything I could do to make the answer, even though it's allegedly good, better?
Your response was indeed strong, but there's always room for improvement. In this case, you could add more detail about how you handled the stress of the situation. Did you use any project management strategies or stress management techniques? Also, you could increase the impact of your response by discussing the outcome or result in more detail. For example, how did this experience improve your company's crisis response or customer service? Did it lead to any new protocols or safeguards being implemented to prevent similar occurrences in the future?
So So, thanks for watching. That's everything for today. I had a lot of fun showing the product to you guys, and I hope you had fun watching it. And I hope I've inspired you to go and do some interview practice with Canopy. If you wanted to reach out to us, my email address is amu, at canopyai.xyz, and that will be in the description below. So, have a great day. See you later.